Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, world-altering puzzle. We're going to decode exactly how a ragged group of former colonies, basically clinging to the edge of a vast continent, completely leveled up to write the geopolitical rulebook for the modern world. I mean, the global rules you and I live under right now, they absolutely didn't happen by accident. So, grab your notebooks because we are unpacking the ultimate two-century superpower blueprint. You know, it's actually kind of wild when you look back at how this all started. The very first president of the United States, George Washington, literally advised the young nation to just stay out of it. He wanted them to maintain a strict isolationist stance and avoid the endless, messy conflicts of foreign powers. The original game plan was essentially, leave us alone. But fast forward a couple of centuries, and that quiet, isolationist posture had snowballed into a global reach that touches literally every corner of the planet. And that reach didn't just make them a superpower, it created something incredibly rare, a hyperpower. And yeah, that's a real term. It describes that undisputed sole superpower status the US achieved right after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. For the first time in modern history, you had one single nation standing completely alone at the absolute apex of global influence. So here's the big mystery we're solving today. How on earth did a former, stay-out-of-it colony transform into this unmatched hyperpower? To figure that out, we're going to walk through the 4 essential steps of this blueprint: the geographic foundation, the industrial engine, the World War catalysts, and designing global order. Let's jump right in. Step 1. The geographic foundation. Because before America built a single factory or launched a single ship, they basically won the global geographic lottery. It comes down to 3 massive pillars. First, you've got the ultimate natural buffers, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Think of them as giant continent-sized moats. While European powers were practically living on top of each other and constantly invading one another, the US mainland was safely tucked away. Second, insane resource wealth. We're talking endless fertile farmland, massive river networks, and deep energy reserves. And third, friendly borders to the north and south. The US never had to drain its economy or manpower just to fend off immediate existential threats at home. They were safe, incredibly resource-rich, and had endless room to grow. Which brings us to step 2, the industrial engine. Okay, so having prime real estate is great, but it's what they actually did with all that land that changed the game. Starting in the late 19th century, there was a massive immigration boom. Millions of highly motivated workers poured in, providing the labor that literally built the foundation of the world's largest economy. Then, you hit the early 20th century, and boom, major innovations in mass production and assembly lines. The US starts completely outpacing the rest of the world in manufacturing. But an economic engine running that hot, it needs new markets. That compounding energy exploded outward in 1898 during the Spanish-American War. That was the turning point where the US seized overseas territories, fluxed its naval power, and officially stepped onto the stage as a global empire. All right, step 3, the World War catalysts. Now this is where the story gets really staggering. While traditional European empires were tragically tearing each other to pieces in 2 devastating world wars, the United States used those conflicts as the ultimate catalyst for its own rise. At first, they stayed neutral. But neutrality meant huge business, selling enormous, unprecedented quantities of weapons, food, and fuel to the Allies. This continuous one-way flow of goods and money entirely flipped the global balance of power. It transformed the US from a debtor nation into the world's absolute largest creditor. And let's be real, in geopolitics, whoever holds the debt holds the power. And you really can't overstate the physical reality of what this looked like on the ground. Across Europe and Asia, entire cities, rail networks, and heavy industries were reduced to literal rubble, just completely wiped out. Meanwhile, the US mainland, protected by those ocean moats we talked about, suffered 0 industrial damage. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just undamaged. Their factories were running hotter and more efficiently than ever, modernized purely for the war effort. The result of that contrast is just mind-blowing. By the time World War II ended in 1945, this one single nation was manufacturing 50% of all the world's industrial goods, half of the entire planet's production. It was an absolute manufacturing monolith. And because they'd been selling all those supplies for years, they also ended up holding the vast majority of the world's gold reserves. The geopolitical deck hadn't just been reshuffled, the US was basically holding all the aces. Finally, step 4, designing global order. The US didn't just sit back on a mountain of gold and hope for the best. They stepped up as the architect of a brand new international system, explicitly designed to lock in their power through 3 deliberate moves. First, financial hegemony. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement cemented the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. Suddenly, global trade was directly anchored to American financial stability. Second, they spearheaded global institutions like the UN, the IMF, and the World Bank, creating a stable, market-friendly system that naturally favored American commerce. And third, military alliances. By establishing NATO, the US locked down undisputed military dominance over Western Europe. They consciously engineered an entire global system where the rest of the world quite literally relied on them to keep things running. So there you have it, the journey from an isolated string of coastal colonies blessed by geographic luck and an industrial boom to a hyperpower accelerated by the devastation of its rivals. It's a literal masterclass in superpower creation, perfectly cemented by a custom-built global architecture. But all of this leaves us with a pretty provocative question. As the world shifts today and new powers start to rise, can the United States actually maintain this incredible order it built? Understanding the blueprint we just covered is absolutely crucial to finding that answer. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.